Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I've got a nice review for you of the SPC Maker 90X. This is from GearBest and today's model comes in a tin. All good things come in a tin. It says SPC Maker on the front there. Now sadly it doesn't fit into this tin with the props on, so I've had to take it out of the tin and fix the props on, but there you go. It does come with a carbon prop remover, so you can store it in the tin if you like, but what we have here is a 90mm brushed model, and it's very nice as well. So it weighs 41 grams without a battery. It weighs 57 grams with a battery, so nice and lightweight. We've got 8mm coreless brushed motors there, and then we've got these nice propellers. Actually, they look like they're going to give a fair amount of thrust. So we have got a SP Racing F3 flight controller here. Now sadly it comes with CleanFlight installed on it, not Betaflight, so I flashed the latest Betaflight to it. And another downside is it doesn't have a buzzer installed, but of course you can install a buzzer no problem on this one. Now this is the FR Sky version that I have got here, and it's got one of these little D8 receivers here with a little bind button on the back, so it can bind direct to my Taranis Plus, which is what I'm going to be using. We've got a tiny all-in-one camera here, and it looks to be the same camera used in the Aurora series, so very small. And on this model it is protected somewhat, but of course we have the cloverleaf antenna up the top there that is still exposed in a crash. But I really like this carbon frame here, very rugged, very nice, and the camera is at a fixed angle there, and it's also cable tied on really strongly as well, which I like. So we've got two buttons on here. The first one is to switch between PAL and NTSC, and then the other one is to switch through the different bands. So a long press will get you through the different bands, and then a short press will get you through the different channels. The lens is fixed solid. Now one thing that I noticed about this camera from the Aurora series is that it's not great when it comes to dynamic range, but just look how small it is. It's so tiny compared to the other all-in-one cameras, so I think that is a good compromise. So the battery here, you can see it attaches underneath here. It's a 600 milliamp 25C battery. Now at first I thought it was a JST connector, but it's not. Sadly it's proprietary, and they have given this connector here which turns it into a JST connector so you can charge it. However, this was the wrong polarity, and luckily my charger had a reverse polarity checker and it told me, so I had to cut those off and reverse them, so be very careful about that if you have this model. And I don't know why they just didn't put a JST connector on there, but there you go. We've got this proprietary connector. I'm not sure the name of it, but it should allow for the correct current to go through the flight controller, so we shouldn't have a bottleneck, so it should be fairly powerful, this model. I will have to see. So the motors connect via 1.25 pitch JST connectors. We've got a little bit of hot glue on this proprietary connector here as well. It's a really nice build. We've got some heat shrink around the arms to protect the wires. There's also a little bit of foam to protect the battery. Please ignore the mud there. Yeah, and it's a really nice model. Now you do get some other stuff with it. You're given, of course, as I mentioned, the charge cable, but oh, that's a bit of a pain. Watch out for that. And then we have got these motor protectors here which are not installed, which I think is interesting. So yes, the wires are exposed underneath, but you're given these. However, I might keep them off because they are going to add some extra weight here. So you've got 4 of those. We're also given some cable ties here, so I'm not sure what those are for because everything's pretty neat. So I don't know if that's to secure the battery more, because sadly you are not given a spare battery. And then we have a spare set of props, only this time these ones are red. We have a spare rubber band, and then we have the carbon fiber prop remover, and that's everything that you get in the tin. So here we are in the Betaflight configurator. You download it from the Chrome App Store. Of course, now as I mentioned, sadly this model comes with CleanFlight installed on it, so if you want to install Betaflight, you can go into the firmware flasher. Make sure that you select SP Racing F3 Evo and not just the F3 version, and choose the latest firmware here, and then load the firmware online and then flash the firmware. So I've got the quadcopter plugged into the computer via a USB cable, so let's connect to it and I'll just show you my setup here. So I'll just enable expert mode and then let's go into the ports. So you need to have UART 1 turned on. Now I found that when you switch over to Betaflight it disables that. So in order to enable UART 1, for some reason you have to turn these two on here at the bottom. Don't know if it's a bug or not, but that's how to get this back on. And then we have the serial RX selected under the UART 2 there for the receiver. So then if I go into configuration here, we have quad X set up here, no board alignment here, brush selected up here, and then I have got motor stop turned off so that the prop spin up when I arm the quadcopter, and then this option selected here because I'm going to be arming from an aux channel. Then I've got 1040 as the minimum throttle and 2000 as the max throttle for the Taranis. So if we just scroll down here, I have got the serial base receiver and then S-Bus selected for FrSky, and then everything else pretty much is turned off because we can't use it. There's no buzzer on board, no on-screen display here, so everything else here is just pretty much standard settings. Into the failsafe I've got it set to drop. Now PID tuning, I'm going to try this tune first of all because I tend to find that brush models need a higher D, so I've just changed the D up to 50 here and the Super 8 to 0.8, that is my preference there. So I'll see how it flies, and then if I have to change it later I'll overlay the PIDs that worked the best. So if I go into the receiver here, I do have the Taranis turned on, so you can see that everything is working. So TAER for Taranis. In CleanFlight it was actually set up as AETR, so if you want to just plug this in and use the CleanFlight settings, then you are going to have to change this because it needs to be TAER for FrSky. And then we have all the auxiliaries that I've set up. So I've got my arming on aux 1 as I say, and then I have got my 3-position switch for aux 2. So if we go into the modes, arming here on aux 1, angle, then horizon, then acro there. And that's all I've got set up. No beeper, of course, but I may install that later if it flies nicely. So lastly, I'll just go into the CLI to show you the version that I'm using. So SP Racing F3 Evo version 3.16 of Betaflight. Okay, let's go for a takeoff with this thing, starting off in angle mode. The first thing I notice is quite a noisy model, this one. Those motors are revving pretty high. Let's go for the punch. Punch isn't bad at all. I would say that it's on par with the QX95, no problem this one. It's got a ton of punch and that big battery. I think we're going to get some decent flight time out of it as well. Okay, try a bit of acro. It's an incredibly dull day again and it's spitting a rain. But I like this one, you know. If I keep it in pretty close though with it not having that buzzer, but you could definitely add one of those. Plenty of punch with this thing to do acro and whatever you want really. So tiny though. So it's an FPV machine really. Listen at those motors zinging away. It must have some high kV motors on it. Of course, it's never usually clear what motors these things have on them, but it's got some powerful ones. The tune seems okay. Have to see what it's like doing FPV, but usually it's a good sign when it's easy to do line of sight acro with, and this one is. So, pretty smooth. Oh, I'm having fun with this one. Yeah, nice. Just I think the only thing that's going to put people off with this one is that reverse polarity on the battery. And it's a noisy thing. There's no prop protectors. And that battery is proprietary. And of course, these tiny models. I lost this one and it got covered in mud and it took me ages to find it, so I'd definitely be sticking a buzzer on there. Okay, let's come in for a landing and do some FPV. So as I mentioned earlier, the dynamic range on this tiny camera is not too hot. I've seen this camera previously, but it's adequate, and it was a unfair day to review it. Really, we have overcast and just a really dark, gloomy day, and it was raining as well. But you can see there's sort of like a spotlight in the center of the screen, so you sort of get like dark corners, but you can generally see what you need to while flying FPV. Now, the tune felt a little bit better flying line of sight than it did in FPV. It felt like the yaw was a little bit loose while flying FPV, but it was okay, not too many wobbles really, and it was a fairly windy day as well. So you'll notice I'm keeping it in pretty close, and that is because this field is just like a mud bath, and I did go out of range with it at the top end of the field. So the top end of the field is 120 meters, and it fell in a load of mud, and it took me about half an hour to find it. So the range is pretty good, what you would expect from these micros, but yes, they are limited to about 100 to 200 meters, something like that. But I was really impressed with the performance of this one. Loads of punch. Those motors absolutely scream, and the flight time, I was getting 5 minutes with a little bit of juice left as well, so pretty impressed with that. So there you go, that is my review of the SPC Maker 90X. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one, and I will leave you with some flying. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers. You know I fall for love. You know I fall for love. Be kind to those around you, don't be merciless. Remember me, for my name is Perseus. Fast. You could be the sword, the shield, defender of the people down below. You know I fall for love. You know I fall for love. You know I fall for love. To have your friends beside you like my Pegasus. Remember me, for my name is Perseus. My name is Perseus. My name is Perseus. My name is Perseus.